Have you ever, tried so incredibly hard to relax that you actually ended up giving yourself a pounding headache?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Right. You block out, 20 minutes on your calendar, you sit down, you close your eyes, and you just internally demand, I am going to find inner peace right now.
And it never works.
Never. 10 minutes later, your jaw is clenched tight enough to, crack a walnut. Your shoulders are creeping all the way up to your ears. You honestly feel more exhausted than when you started.
It's the ultimate paradox of modern wellness culture, I think. We approach this concept of relaxation with the exact same aggressive, goal-oriented intensity that we use for work.
Right, like tackling a massive corporate merger or something.
Exactly, or, grueling workout.
Yeah.
We treat the cure as if it were just another manifestation of the disease itself.
And that contradiction is really the foundation of what we're unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
It's good to be here.
So our mission today is to explore this fascinating lecture from Ajan Chayanuntho. Specifically, we're looking at his 80th orientation address.
Yeah, and it really thoroughly dismantles our conventional approach to mindfulness.
It flips everything on its head. We're going to unpack a framework he calls effortless stillness. We want to figure out how to cultivate peace without that excruciating sensation of, trying to meditate.
Because trying is the trap. To understand why that sensation of trying is so counterproductive, we really have to look at our psychological conditioning.
Which starts so early, right?
Oh, from childhood.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired by this fundamental, culturally reinforced equation. Basically, great results require great exertion.
Study harder to get better grades.
Exactly. Push your muscles to the point of failure if you want to build strength. The mechanism is clear. Effort applied to the external world usually equals material success.
So we take that blueprint, the one that built our careers, and we just awkwardly slap it onto our internal landscape.
We assume the mind operates under the exact same laws of physics as a bicep.
Which is kind of a massive mistake.
It is a catastrophic category error.
Yeah.
Ajahn Chanon's philosophy points out that the mind operates on a completely inverted paradigm.
Okay, let's unpack this. How is it inverted?
Well, when we give our minds an aggressive command like stop overthinking right now or achieve tranquility, we're essentially dropping a massive, heavy sandbag into a space that naturally wants to be light.
Oh, I love that sandbag analogy.
Yeah, the cognitive load required to enforce that command requires the brain to allocate immense metabolic resources. You're working so hard just to force the peace.
Right, you're activating your brain's executive functioning just to monitor whether or not you're relaxing.
Exactly.
Your prefrontal cortex is suddenly working overtime. It's acting like this strict internal hall monitor, constantly checking your mental state against this arbitrary goal of peace.
And the irony there is entirely physiological. The moment you introduce the desire for peace as a strict objective, you trigger the sympathetic nervous system.
Wait, really? Just wanting to relax stresses you out?
Yeah, because your brain interprets the unmet goal as a stressor. So before you've even taken your first deep breath, you've initiated this cascade of mild stress hormones.
That is wild.
You've destroyed the natural spaciousness of the mind by, filling it with a heavy machinery of expectation.
Think about your own daily routines for a second. How often do you treat your own peace of mind as just another obligatory task?
Wedged right into an overcrowded schedule.
Exactly. It sits right there on the to-do list between submit quarterly tax documents and pick up the dry cleaning. You have achieve mindfulness.
Right. By weaponizing peace as a metric for productivity, the exhaustion is baked right into the process. We are literally turning sanctuary into labor.
So if effort is the enemy here, if it's the very thing destabilizing the mind, what is the mind actually supposed to look like before we crush it with those sandbags?
That's the perfect question. The source material addresses this by splitting human perception into two distinct functional categories.
And grasping the difference between these two is pretty much the linchpin for this whole thing, right?
Absolutely. So the first mode is called original knowing. Sometimes it's described as knowing from birth. And the second is knowing with memory and thought.
Let's start with original knowing. What does that actually look like?
So original knowing is pure, raw sensory reception. It is completely unmediated perception. Think about the cognitive state of an infant.
Before they have language or concepts.
Exactly. Light hits the retina, sound waves vibrate the eardrum, the skin feels a temperature change. But there's absolutely no semantic attachment.
Meaning they don't label it.
Right. The sensory input is processed without triggering any associative chain of meaning. It takes zero effort. It's biologically effortless.
So if you perceive the visual frequency of the color green, there's no neurological leap to the word green.
None.
You don't categorize it as a leaf or think about chlorophyll or remember that it's autumn. Your visual cortex just registers the light.
Yes, it is a state of completely non-judgmental observation. Yeah. But as we grow up, we inevitably accumulate this psychological overlay.
Which Buddhist epistemology calls avidya, right?
Yes, avidya. People usually translate it as ignorance. But in this context, it's really a structural misapprehension of reality.
Like an accumulation of baggage.
It is the dense accumulation of past memories, learned biases, cultural conditioning, and, linguistic labels.
And that brings us to the second type, knowing with memory and thought.
Right. This is where we transition from simply receiving data to constantly, obsessively interpreting and categorizing it. We develop this profound dependency on meaning-making.
We lose the ability to just see the color green.
Exactly. You see a plant in your yard. The brain's pattern recognition software immediately says, that's a dandelion.
And then the chain reaction starts.
Instantly. Identification triggers a stored preference. Dandelions are weeds. The preference triggers an emotion, frustration.
Which triggers planning.
Yeah.
I need to go buy weed killer.
And that triggers social comparison. Why is my neighbor's lawn so perfect? And suddenly you're spiraling into a subtle crisis about your own status and self-worth.
All from just seeing a green shape. The brain extrapolates this massive complex narrative about personal failure in fractions of a second.
And that cognitive leap requires an astonishing amount of neural energy.
Which explains why we are all so tired all the time.
What's fascinating here is that the modern mind experiences this profound chronic fatigue because the brain is constantly hauling around these heavy data packets.
The history, the trauma, the future anxieties.
Right. We continuously overlay them onto every single present moment interaction. The spaciousness of original knowing is just suffocated by this relentless conceptualization.
Let's use an analogy to make this super relatable. Imagine you're lying in a park, just staring up at a clear blue sky dotted with clouds.
That's a classic environment for observing this exact mental shift.
So if your brain is resting in that state of original knowing, your eyes are just processing white, amorphous shapes drifting across a blue backdrop.
No narrative attached.
Zero narrative. The metabolic cost to your brain is basically nothing. You're just a passive receiver of light.
But then the default mode network kicks in.
Right. You shift into knowing with memory and thought. The pattern recognition engine fires up.
And the cognitive labor begins.
You look at a cloud, and your brain decides, oh, that shape looks like a dog. That single association is a tripwire.
Because the concept of dog accesses your memory banks.
Exactly. You realize, oh no, I forgot to buy dog food this morning. That memory triggers forward projection. I have to drive to the store later.
Which triggers anxiety. Traffic will be terrible.
And your windshield wipers are broken. So within 5 seconds, the totally passive act of looking at a fluffy cloud has initiated a physiological stress response.
Your heart rate elevates, cortisol is released, all because of an internal narrative cascade.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
Because the mechanism operating beneath this cascade is completely automatic, and it's relentless. We run this associative software in the background every waking second.
It's kind of like leaving 80 browser tags open on a laptop.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And, half of them are auto-playing high-res videos simultaneously. The processor is overheating, the battery is draining, the fan is screaming.
And we wonder why we hit a wall of exhaustion by 2 p.m. We assume it's just from sitting at a desk.
But really, we've been running an invisible marathon of categorization.
So the challenge becomes a matter of reverse engineering. If our brains are acting like hyperactive meaning-making engines, overlaying all this stress onto neutral reality, how do we get back to original knowing?
Right. How do we get back to low energy mode?
Well, we established earlier that blunt force effort is useless. If we command the brain to stop, if we aggressively order ourselves to just see the cloud, we're just dragging another heavy sandbag into the room.
Okay, but this requires a major shift in how we approach mindfulness, because it completely contradicts the mainstream instructions we've all been sold.
Very true.
The corporatized version of meditation is entirely built around intense, disciplined focus. We're told to sit rigid, close our eyes, and zero our attention onto a microscopic point.
Like tracking the exact friction of air on your upper lip.
Exactly. And the assumption is that if we don't intensely focus like that, our minds will just immediately wander back to windshield wipers and dog food.
And that assumption is the primary hurdle here. The source material is emphatic about this. Gripping the mind staring intently inward, maintaining this hyper-focused spotlight of attention that is the exact opposite of what you should do.
Let's break down the physiology of why that intense focus fails. When someone zeroes in on their breath like their life depends on it, it immediately creates physical tension, right?
Absolutely. The neurobiology of intense focus is totally intertwined with the sympathetic nervous system.
The fight or flight system.
Right. When you narrow your attention to a pinpoint, your body interprets that narrowing as preparation for a threat.
Wow.
The ocular muscles behind your closed eyelids begin to strain because you're trying to literally look at an internal sensation. Your forehead wrinkles. Your breathing actually gets restricted because your conscious mind is interfering with an automatic process.
So your nervous system is mounting a low-level defense response against your own command to meditate.
Precisely. Your brain waves can't relax. They stay in these high-frequency beta states because your mind feels besieged by its own hypervigilance.
You're basically deploying an without measuring the exact millimeter of chest expansion.
Exactly. You don't measure the cubic volume of air. You just loosely know what's happening.
I love the analogy we were discussing earlier for this. It's like holding a fragile soap bubble.
Yes. The physics of a delicate object.
If you approach a perfectly formed soap bubble with the hypervigilance of traditional meditation, if you grip it tightly to make sure it doesn't float away, or stare at it with intense pressure, it pops instantly.
The very effort applied to secure it is what annihilates it.
Right. But if you just expend an open hand, keep your palm flat and relaxed, you provide a stable environment for it to rest. You aren't forcing the bubble to stay, you're just keeping the space open.
The soap bubble perfectly represents the present moment. It's inherently fragile, it's transient, aggressively attempting to seize it, destroys it, and replaces it with tension.
But the open palm of glancing awareness allows the present to just unfold without interference.
And beyond the philosophical elegance of that, the practical utility is massive. Because the metabolic cost of glancing awareness is almost zero, you don't have to restrict it to a quiet room.
You don't need a meditation cushion.
Not at all. It's a continuous, sustainable background process. You can maintain this diffuse awareness while navigating a crowded subway or doing your work.
Or even having a nuanced conversation with someone, though I think there's an assumption that if you're meditating while talking, you're fracturing your attention, making you less present for the person.
It's actually the opposite neurologically. It grounds your cognitive processing.
So?
By keeping just a tiny fraction of your awareness anchored in the physical reality of your body, you occupy the neurological space that the default mode network usually uses to spin up anxiety.
Oh, I see. You're filling that latent capacity with the low-stakes data of just being physically present?
Exactly. Which prevents the heavy, high-stakes data of past regrets or future fears from hijacking the system.
And nobody around you even knows you're doing it. You're just continuously recalibrating your nervous system in secret.
It's incredibly practical.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Doing this while typing an email is one thing. But we have to stress test this framework against high-stakes reality.
The true test of any practice.
Right. Because what happens when the environment becomes actively hostile? Imagine you get called into a meeting and your boss unfairly and aggressively reprimands you in front of everyone.
Or you're driving on the highway and someone violently cuts you off, forcing you to slam on the brakes.
Yes. Your nervous system undergoes an immediate shock. Adrenaline dumps into the bloodstream. Your amygdala fires. Cortisol spikes.
The massive biochemical storm.
In the face of that storm, doesn't that delicate soap bubble of glancing awareness just shatter instantly?
Well, expecting the bubble to act as a titanium shield against biological reality is a misunderstanding of the practice.
We aren't trying to suppress our survival mechanisms.
No, you can't suppress the central nervous system. But Ajahn Chanon introduces a specific internal protocol for these moments of intense physiological ignition. In Thai, it's Ninglaru Yang Sangop.
Which distills down to still and know peacefully.
Exactly. Still and know peacefully.
But when adrenaline is flooding your system after a near miss on the highway, your biological urge is to retaliate, to lay on the horn, to scream.
Core.
So the instruction to know peacefully feels entirely counterintuitive.
That urge for retaliation is just the organism trying to discharge sudden kinetic energy. The protocol of still and know peacefully operates fundamentally on the principle of non-interference.
Basically, the profound practice of letting it be.
Yes. And to grasp the mechanics of this in a crisis, the source material uses this really precise metaphor of a fire and its firewood.
Let's dissect that. It's so good.
Neurologically, psychologically, an emotion, whether it's rage, terror, or despair, does not possess infinite energy. It is a metabolic event with a distinct lifespan.
It is a fire.
It's a fire. And by the laws of thermodynamics, a fire requires a continuous supply of combustible material to survive.
So in the scenario with the boss yelling at you, the initial yell is the spark.
Yes. It connects with your nervous system, and there's an immediate ignition. Your face flushes, your pulse accelerates. That's the initial flare of the biological fire.
But the critical juncture is what happens in the milliseconds right after that ignition.
Because that emotional fire will burn out very quickly if it's deprived of fuel.
And the fuel, the firewood that turns a brief reflex into an hours-long bad mood, is our own cognitive processing.
Our internal monologue.
The narrative we immediately start building in our heads. How dare they speak to me that way? I work so hard. I generated half the revenue last quarter. I should just quit right now.
Every single one of those sentences is a dry log hurled directly into the center of the emotional fire.
You are actively feeding it.
You're using your brain's highest cognitive functions to sustain a biological stress response. So the intervention here requires immense restraint. You don't try to douse the fire with water.
You don't aggressively command yourself to calm down.
No, because forcing a state of calm introduces the sandbag of effort again, which just makes you stressed about not being calm.
Trying to forcefully suppress anger usually just mutates it into tightly coiled resentment anyway. It just drives it underground.
The strategy is simple starvation. You cease the supply of firewood.
Stop throwing logs on the fire.
You deliberately withdraw your attention from that seductive story of your own victimization, and you redirect that glancing awareness back to the physical sensations in your body.
You decouple the physical feeling from the story. You observe your rapid heartbeat or the heat in your neck, but you refuse to attach the narrative of the unfair boss to those feelings.
You watch the biological machinery operate without claiming ownership of its output. And the reality is, an emotion deprived of its cognitive loop naturally decays.
It burns fiercely for a minute, consumes the adrenaline, and then just dies out.
You literally let it be until it ceases to be.
I think this reveals a really profound flaw in how our culture thinks about letting go.
Oh, completely.
The phrase has been commodified to imply this forceful active expulsion. When people are told to let go of anger, they visualize it as this massive, heavy boulder blocking their path.
Like a physical obstacle.
Right. And they assume letting go means bending down, lifting this massive weight, and violently hurling it as far away as possible.
A literal purging of the psyche.
But the physical act of picking it up and throwing it requires so much energy. To throw it, you have to establish an intimate grip on it first.
And psychologically, the harder you actively try to banish a memory, the more neural pathways you dedicate to it. You end up searing it deeper into your brain.
It's the rebound effect.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, fighting internal pain is like running away from your own shadow. You can sprint until your lungs burn, but the shadow is still perfectly tethered to your feet.
So true letting go means never laying hands on the boulder in the first place. You recognize it's there, and you simply adjust your trajectory to walk past it.
You transition from an active combatant to a passive observer. And to really concretize this shift, we can use a classic visualization from these traditions.
The sky and the storm?
Yes. Consider the fundamental architecture of the original mind as the vast, boundless expanse of the open sky.
The empty space that contains all weather.
Exactly. The emotional events, the road rage, the conflict, the anxiety, those were meteorological phenomena. They are thunderstorms.
Some are light showers, some are supercells with lightning.
But when a storm moves in, the sky doesn't mount a defense. It doesn't deploy countermeasures against the lightning or try to physically push the dark clouds away.
Because the sky knows it's vastly larger than any localized storm. It doesn't need to fight the weather to survive it.
It just provides the spatial allowance for the storm to exist. It embodies the protocol of still and know peacefully. It watches the thermodynamic energy of the storm expend itself.
And eventually, the storm dissipates. The clouds clear.
And the sky itself is never scarred by the lightning. It's never stained by the rain. It remains eternally vast and untouched. Glancing awareness is the tool that lets us identify as the sky rather than the storm.
We establish our identity in the observation itself. That is so powerful.
It really is.
But this leads to a necessary philosophical pivot. Is this framework merely a sophisticated life hack for surviving traffic, or is it directing us toward a bigger structural shift in consciousness?
It is entirely foundational to a deeper shift. This practice is the functional application of the middle way, which is the central organizing principle of Buddhist thought.
The middle way.
Yes, it demands the rigorous balancing of three pillars:
Yep.
ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. If one pillar is overdeveloped, the whole architecture collapses.
Which directly challenges a huge bias in how meditation is approached in the West. We have this assumption that concentration is linear, like more is always better.
The deeper the trance, the more enlightened you are.
Right. People think the ultimate goal is to reach this absolute deepest state of meditative absorption.
In the Pali Canon, those states of profound, unshakable trance are called appana samadhi, and it's one of the most insidious traps in contemplative practice. Ajan Chanon spends significant time dismantling it.
What does appana samadhi actually feel like for a practitioner?
It is a state of near-total sensory and cognitive cessation. Your awareness withdraws entirely from the peripheral nervous system.
You lose the sensation of having a physical body.
Your breath becomes imperceptible. The external environment, sound, sight, touch, is completely shut out. What's left is just this unbroken state of blank bliss and stillness.
I mean, given how exhausted we all are, a state of unbroken blank bliss sounds like an absolute sanctuary. Why does the Ajahn categorize that relief as a trap?
Because it functions as a highly sophisticated form of spiritual bypassing. It's an escape hatch. Ajahn Chanon compares entering appana samadhi to eating a massive, satisfying meal and immediately falling into a deep, comatose sleep.
Just totally passed out.
While you're asleep, you experience zero suffering. It feels great. But are you executing any necessary work? Are you resolving your interpersonal conflicts?
No, you're offline.
Are you developing any wisdom about your psychological triggers? No, you are just asleep.
You hit the pause button on your existence.
And the brutal reality emerges when you exit the trance. When you wake up, the external world hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And more importantly, your internal architecture hasn't evolved.
You come back with the exact same emotional baggage and flaws as before. You didn't learn anything.
You just took a luxurious vacation from your ego.
Right.
But because the relief is so intoxicating, people get addicted to it. They dedicate decades just trying to re-enter that trance.
Completely neglecting the actual work of developing insight.
Exactly. So to counter this, the middle way prescribes a very calibrated state of focus known as upakara samadhi.
Upakara samadhi, often translated as neighborhood or access concentration. Let's look how it differs from the blackout trance.
In upakara samadhi, the mind is incredibly stable and still. But, and this is key, the sensory apparatus remains fully online.
The perimeter defenses are still up.
Right. You can still hear distant traffic, you feel the temperature of the room, and most crucially, your internal perceptive faculties remain sharp.
You have the bandwidth to actively watch your thoughts rise and fall without being hijacked by them.
Yes, and that real-time observation is the only way true wisdom can develop. In this context, wisdom is the visceral realization of impermanence, seeing clearly that every mental state is transient.
We can visualize this distinction with the metaphor of a theater.
I love this one.
Appana samadhi, the deep trance, is like squeezing your eyes shut, covering your ears, and hiding in a soundproof bunker beneath the theater to escape the noise of the play.
You're safe, but you learn nothing about the plot.
Exactly. Upakara samadhi, on the other hand, is like walking into the auditorium and taking a seat right in the center row. Your eyes are wide open.
You are present for the performance.
The chaotic, dramatic play of your life is unfolding on the stage in front of you. You see anger storm across the stage. You watch anxiety pacing in the background.
You see every detail with crystalline clarity.
But the fundamental rule is you absolutely refuse to unbolt yourself from that seat, climb onto the stage, and participate in the dialogue.
You maintain the boundary between audience and actor.
The second you jump on stage, you're engulfed. You start arguing with anger, weeping with anxiety. You lose the macro perspective.
But by staying in the seat, you decode the mechanics of the play. You see anger enter, deliver its lines, exhaust its script, and exit.
You realize the actors aren't permanent residents of the stage, they are transient.
And that direct observation breaks the illusion that these transient emotions are fixed parts of your identity.
Which brings us to the grand finale of this framework. Where does this entire process lead us?
Well, the ultimate revelation is that this systematic dismantling leads us directly back to the original mind, or the true mind, a state of profound emptiness and peace.
But there is a massive catch here, right?
A huge one. The paradigm-shifting truth is, You cannot, under any circumstances, create this state of emptiness.
Which feels like a paradox. If I'm doing the glancing awareness and starving my emotional fires, aren't I actively constructing a peaceful state?
Believing you are constructing peace is the final trap of effort. If you actively build tranquility, it's a conditioned phenomenon, and anything constructed can be deconstructed. It's fragile.
So what are we actually doing?
You have to realize that the emptiness, the fundamental peace, is not a project. It's your pre-existing baseline. It's already there, perfectly intact beneath the noise of your thoughts.
You don't manufacture the original mind. You just stop doing the things that obscure it.
The cessation of interference is the only requirement.
I think the most beautiful way to summarize this entire deep dive is the classic analogy of the muddy water.
It maps the physics of the mind so perfectly.
Visualize your mind as a tall glass of water that's been heavily contaminated with dirt and sediment.
The sediment is the avidya, the ignorance, the labels, the anxieties.
Now, if you look at that murky water and decide, I must clean this right now, and you plunge your hand in to physically scoop out the dirt, what happens?
You violently agitate the water.
You stir it all up. The harder you try to filter it with your bare hands, which is intense effort, aggressive commands to relax, the cloudier it gets.
Your attempt to solve the problem is the engine exacerbating it. It's the sandbag trap all over again.
So what is the only way to clear the muddy water?
You have to take your hand out. You place the glass on a stable table, and you leave it completely, radically alone.
That withdrawal of interference is glancing awareness. That is, letting it be.
You just observe the glass without touching it. And when you stop interfering, gravity takes over. Slowly, the sediment naturally sinks to the bottom.
And as the dirt settles, what remains at the top?
The pristine, clear water that was there the whole time. You didn't create the clarity. Gravity didn't create it. It was the fundamental reality of the water, just waiting to be revealed.
The clarity is the default state. So, what does this all mean for us? True peace isn't just another grueling task to put on your heavy to-do list.
No, it's an undoing.
By dropping the knowing with memory, practicing the open-palmed glancing awareness, and starving our emotional fires of their firewood thoughts, we unlock a massive energy-saving mode for our brains.
We let gravity clear our muddy water.
Exactly.
As we wrap up, I want to pose a final provocative thought for everyone listening. We've talked extensively today about how the mind naturally recalibrates when left entirely alone.
Right.
But look at the modern world around us. We're absolutely obsessed with life hacking, hyper-productivity, and constantly optimizing our own psychology with endless apps and routines.
We're on an exhausting treadmill of self-iteration.
If the ultimate truth is that our minds require us to stop interfering, is our modern obsession with self-improvement actually the very stick we are using to constantly stir up our own muddy water?
Wow.
What would happen if, just for today, you completely gave up the project of improving your mind and just let it be?
If I am no longer obligated to manage the impossible project of my own perfection, I suspect that tension headache might just naturally dissipate. I am consciously attempting to, no, wait, I am not attempting anything. I'm just observing the tension and leaving the glass on the table. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the mind. We hope the mechanics of effortless stillness serve you well. Until next time, let gravity do the work.
Take care, everyone.